Nuclear power is a very controversial topic right now in today's society, and even though it's less on the media nowadays, there are still many people talking about the effects that nuclear power could have on our society. So this all started with Jay Lear, who is a scientist and has done some research on the starting of nuclear power plants. It basically found in 1954, the first commercial nuclear power plant was created in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. Now, this was a power plant that was really the first one, and it was more of a prototype model that still ran, but basically was the start of everything. If you take a look at the sheet, this is from the Environmental Case for Nuclear Power written by Robert C. Morris. This sheet, basically, the top of it talks about how a nuclear power plant works. And basically, you can see the nuclear fuel rods heat up the water turns into steam, the steam powers the turbine, the water condenses back into water, and then it goes back and completes the cycle over and over again. So, as you can see, I feel that nuclear power, it can be a very good energy source for the United States, being that it can be less pollutant than other energy sources, stronger than other energy sources, and actually more reliable than other energy sources that are out there. So, being less pollutant, the one big thing everyone notices nowadays is the big coal power plants with all the big smoke coming out the top. Now actually, James Dunderstadt, who's a professor of science and engineering, has actually done some tests on the smoke coming out and found that it contained a lot of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and carbon monoxide, which are very poisonous chemicals, and basically the amount that is released through the coal power plants is a lot more than would ever be released from the nuclear power plant itself. Another person named Mario Salazar, who is an Environmental Protection Agency scientific engineer, basically did some research on solar panels and found that when they create the photovoltaic cells, which is what gathers the sunlight, that a lot of radiation is actually released from the creation of that process. So even through that, there are still chemicals being put in that are pretty bad for the environment. Now, being a lot stronger than any other energy sources, Ferdinand Banks, who is an economist who is internationally known, did a research on the cost of nuclear power versus coal versus gasoline, that basically how much does it cost per kilowatt hour, including construction of the plant and the use and maintenance of the different plants and procedures, and basically found that in the United States, nuclear power is 1.7 cents a kilowatt hour, coal is 2 cents, and gas is 5 cents. So basically you can see that nuclear is cheaper than coal, not by much, but it still is cheaper. But if you bring this over to Europe, in Europe, nuclear power is about 1.7 cents, coal is about 4 cents, and then gasoline is about 7 or 8. So it really jumps it up, seeing nuclear power is a lot cheaper, and a lot of nuclear power is used in Europe, throughout Europe. One of the other things with that is, for the amount needed versus the nuclear uranium versus coal, if you were to take 1 pound of uranium that is used in the fuel rods and 1 pound of coal, the uranium will produce 2.7 million times more power than the 1 pound of coal. So you can see it's substantial. Even now, there's a new reactor called the breeder reactor that's going on. And basically, it uses more of the uranium, well, it uses more parts of the uranium and reprocesses it back into usable energy and usable fuel. So basically, it bumps up that 1 pound from 2.7 million to 385 million times more powerful than coal. So you can see this is huge on the little amount you need to produce so much more energy. Now, the one big thing about nuclear power that a lot of people are worried about is it being reliable and being safe. So Richard Adams, who was an environmental engineer and a nuclear power plant operator, was talking about the Fukushima disaster, what happened in Japan with the big earthquake that hit, and then the tidal wave that followed after basically wiped out all of Japan's electronic systems. So there was no way to really monitor the nuclear power plant or cool it down. So what they were able to do was, following the safety procedures of what happens, the power plant workers were actually able to successfully cool down the power plants and make it safe for everyone. So no one was injured in the plant, even though such a disaster happened at Japan. Another thing with the safety is the biggest nuclear accident everyone knows of is Chernobyl in Russia. Everyone's almost heard of Chernobyl. Now, if you take a look at that sheet, Chernobyl has actually only killed, as a direct result of the power plant, only 31 people. Now, there were 3,000 or 4,000 people later on that eventually have passed because of cancer and other things because of the radiation. But then take a look at the coal mining. One coal explosion, over 1,500 people died in just one. So if you were to add all those up, all the coal ones, all the ones with the oil and gas, where it's over about 1,000 people dying from just one incident, add all that up, that's almost nothing compared to nuclear power. And what they're finding nowadays is that the nuclear power plant is so much safer because with the air pollution that's given off through the other things, they're estimating about 50,000 people each year pass because of the air pollution. So take the 50,000 people a year, add it to all those totals, and then compare it with nuclear power, that's a lot more. Even think of the coal miners with the black lung from getting all the coal dust and stuff. It kills about 4,000 miners a year for that. Add that into the total. So you can see nuclear power is actually safer than what people think compared to all the other energy sources. So as you can see, nuclear power can be very profitable for the United States, being a material that is less pollutant on the environment through especially compared to the coal. It is a lot stronger, being a lot cheaper. You need a lot less material to equal the same amount of energy, and being more reliable, being that less disasters have happened and less people have been killed due to a direct result of it. Thank you.
Oh, great.